Hello, everybody. First of all, let me take this opportunity to thank you all for coming to our presentation. My name is Andreas Nilsen. I'm the lead programmer of Cannabis Club Systems. We're a Madrid-based team, and we're developing hardware and software looking to help and improve several areas of the cannabis industry. Now, firstly, I'm going to talk a bit about the power of data. And then later on, my colleague Alberto will demonstrate how our solutions can help the industry in this respect. Now, data has for decades helped transform several industries, but also the world as we know it. In more recent times, where enormous amounts of data is being generated every day, new methods for utilizing this data has become more and more popular. A few terms that defines the power of data are business analytics, predictive analytics, behavioral analytics, analytical statistics, business intelligence, and data visualization. Those can be tough terms for anyone to understand, and as such, I feel that the best way to explain the power of data to you all is to go through a few stories, a few examples. Let's start with a story from one of the largest retailers in the United States called Target. As most other retailers, Target offers their shoppers loyalty cards. Now, loyalty cards, loyalty cards, while being beneficial to the customers, are absolutely crucial to the retailers. Every single purchase you make with your loyalty card or your credit card is being tracked, saved, and analyzed by advanced computers. This data is then used to create a detailed profile on you so that the retailers can decide what kind of marketing to send to you. A few years ago, a man outside Minneapolis walked into a Target store. He demanded to speak to the manager. He brought with him coupons that had been sent to his daughter advertising baby products, diapers, nursery beds, and whatnot. He angrily told the manager, "Look, my daughter is 16 years old. Are you encouraging her to become pregnant?" Now, the store manager, he was as puzzled as the father. He checked out the coupons. They checked out, the address was right, there was nursery furniture, diapers, baby food. He didn't know what had happened, so he just apologized to the man. "We're sorry, I don't know what happened." A few days later, he called the man to apologize again, but this time the man was taken back, the father. He explained to the store manager, "Look, apparently there has been some activities going on in my house that I was not aware of. I've had a serious talk with my daughter. She is in fact pregnant. I owe you an apology." Now, this is a classic example of how companies use your shopping history to find out more details about you. In this certain case, Target had identified 25 different products, which if bought together, indicates with a high probability that you are in fact pregnant. This way, once they know this, they will send you your tailored advertisement, in this case, baby products. Or The next example is IBM's Watson. Now, they say the days of a computer filling a whole room is gone, and for the most part, that is true. However, for IBM Watson, it is definitely not true. This is IBM's supercomputer. This is, in a nutshell, the most advanced computer built by man. What makes Watson so unique is that it can read, analyze, organize, and learn from even the most unstructured documents and information. It can then take this data and turn it into something meaningful, useful. What's most impressive about Watson is that it can actually take human questions and answer them based on this data. Now, to demonstrate the power of Watson to the world, IBM chose to enroll it as a contestant on the world-famous game show Jeopardy! They pitted Watson against the former game show champions Ken Jennings and Brad Rutter. During the contest, Watson had access to over 200 million pages of data, including all of Wikipedia. Ken Jennings had previously notched up 74 consecutive victories on Jeopardy, a world record, while Brad Rutter had won over $3 million, again a world record. And in the end, neither of them was a match for Watson. As you can see from the final scoreboards, Watson beat the former champions by a solid margin, which is an astonishing feature by a computer. Now IBM, they didn't stop there. As the huge Jeopardy success proved how their supercomputer could help humanity in different ways, they decided to attack the healthcare industry. Let's look at some interesting statistics. More than 80% of all the data in the world was created in the last 2 years. Moving forward, a 200% data growth every 1 to 2 years is expected. 80% of all the data in the world is unstructured. Medical information is doubling every 4 years. As many as 1 in 5 medical diagnoses is either incomplete or wrong. Every day, 75 new clinical trials start in the US alone. And finally, a massive $750 billion, or 30 cents of every dollar spent on healthcare, goes to waste. Now, based on these statistics and the success in Jeopardy, IBM decided to send Watson to medical school. In essence, engineers have fed Watson with enormous amounts of medical data, such as diseases, symptoms, medications, history, and crucially, the outcome of various treatments and medicine. With all this data at its fingertips, Watson is able to offer actual medical advice that is accurate and consistent. Now, how does all this work? First, Dr. Watson listens to the symptoms of a patient. It then identifies the key pieces of information in the request. It scans through vast amounts of data to find family history, current medications, current treatments, as well as other existing conditions. It combines this data with results and findings from tests, from treatments, from doctors' notes, nurses' notes, clinical studies, published papers, and much more. And from here, Watson can actually provide a potential treatment option, several options in fact, and its confidence rating in each one. And crucially, Dr. Watson can be offered anywhere in the world. As long as you have a computer, in the near future, Dr. Watson will be on call. Taking it one step further, with the development of smartwatches and wearable technology, Dr. Watson will be able to utilize this in order to give you a more accurate analysis. In fact, by analyzing the readings from your body over time, coupled with your personal and your family history, Dr. Watson will be able to to predict diseases before you can even feel any symptoms. I suppose it's worth mentioning at this point that a few of us in the team, we've actually worked for IBM for quite a long time. And to be frank, I can't believe I'm actually sitting here promoting them. So let's move on. Let's look at an actual example from the healthcare industry. A woman in China was diagnosed by her doctor with breast cancer. Her husband, who held a position in a university with vast computing resources, was not content with listening to just a few handful of doctors, and so he chose an analytical approach to cure his wife. Over 10,000 cases of Asian women in her age group with her exact type of breast cancer were loaded into a supercomputer. Now, obviously, for us humans, analyzing 10,000 medical records would take an age, but for such a computer, it's a piece of cake. The computer analyzed the various types of treatments, diets, medications that had been prescribed, which ones had worked, which ones had not. Based on all this, it found the treatment that was most likely to succeed for the woman. Several months later, the woman had recovered completely and the cancer was gone. Now, having looked at how the power of data have helped transform other industries, what can it do for the thriving cannabis industry? We can start with the cultivation process, which in places like the United States is extremely tightly controlled. Every single plant has to be tracked from seed to sale. Now they've already applied RFID trackers, which is a small chip on the plant. These enable the plants to be tracked all the way from the seed until it reaches the dispensary, ensuring that the right product ends up in the right hands. By using yield data from various strains and seed providers, growers can better gauge how much product they are likely to get from a certain growth. Looking at statistics for various types of products, such as fertilizers, boosters, treatments, nutrition, can help advise on when and how certain grows can be improved. Moreover, by using real data from dispensaries, growers can discover which products are the most popular, both in their regions and throughout the industry as a whole, and conversely, they can also see which products are underperforming. By utilizing analytics, the growers can also find out which types of products the dispensaries are running out of stock on. All this data can help the growers tailor their crops towards what the market really needs. What about dispensaries? Similar to how the growers can benefit from detailed tracking and analysis of data, so can the dispensaries and the clubs. If one of your products is moving very slowly, regional averages can be used to see if you're overpricing it. Similarly, organized lab data and tests can be used to see if your provider may be using unsavory methods, which in turn will put off users. You can compare your dispense rates to averages across the whole region, as well as industry averages, to help position yourself better in the market. And by analyzing your dispense history over a long period of time, you can see at which times you're likely to dispense more products, at which time your dispensary is the most busy, and this data can then be used to schedule your staff and coverage. Moreover, you can see what the top trending products are right now, products that you might not be providing. Have you been offered a new product from a provider? Use data to see how this product has fared in other places, how it's been performing, and it will help you make the decision. Now, for social smoking clubs, the data applies in the same way as for dispensaries. However, as is typical with the clubs, you track your members. They come to your club, they scan their card, and you will have detailed data at your fingertips. Do your members, for example, prefer different types of products based on specific types of events unfolding in your club? Maybe you're hosting a movie night, the members will prefer indica strains. Or if you're hosting a workshop, they might prefer sativa strains. By utilizing data correctly, you will know this. Now, are your members more likely to stay longer in the club during certain events? By using these digital membership cards, you can see exactly how long your members stay in the club and combine that data with the activities going on in your club to find out what your members want and really need. Both you and your medical users can benefit greatly by applying an analytical approach. They can be asked to answer a few questions for each visit, and these answers will help you know how they enjoy and how they react to their treatments. The information can even be sent automatically to their doctor, who can use this to tailor their prescriptions and treatments. Like we discussed previously with Dr. Watson, this is key information for doctors, and it will be invaluable in the future for them to better prescribe treatments that actually work. What about paperwork? As cannabis becomes regulated and legalized across the world, enormous resources are required to track and monitor every part of the operation, from seed to sale and the aftermath. Spending too much time on paperwork than actually running your business can be detrimental and exhausting to anyone. Luckily, with today's technology, most, if not all, of the paperwork processes can be eradicated and replaced by tailored hardware and software solutions. A tailored software system can automatically fill in your forms, provide suggestions and advice, and even submit your results to the appropriate recipients, be it suppliers, customers, government offices, tax departments, or others. A well-designed hardware operation can help monitor your plants, your dispensary, your club, your members, and much more. It's now time for me to pass the baton on to my colleague Alberto, who will explain how we in Cannabis Club Systems aim to help transform various areas of the cannabis industry into a data-driven, paperless, and thoroughly enjoyable experience.
Vale, pues muchas gracias, Andreas. Yo soy Alberto Santos y soy el jefe de ingeniería para Cannabis Club Systems. Os quiero decir bienvenidos a Cannabis 2016 y ahora empezaremos mi lado de la presentación. Se considera que la escritura fue desarrollada como una forma de seguir cuentas agricultoras y mercantiles. La emergencia de la escritura fue la primera instancia en nuestra historia en la cual la propiedad de permanencia pudo ser aplicado al pensamiento. Rápidamente, esta nueva forma de mantener los datos compilados en volutas y libros expresó no solamente cosas prácticas del comercio, pero sino ideas complejas. Libros como estos han demostrado su eficacia no solamente como forma de guardar datos, sino también de comunicación. Con un cuaderno tiene la capacidad de guardar información bajo la presunción de que se mantendrá igual y cualquier otro lo podría comprender, con seguridad de cualquier cambio a posteriori sería distinguible por su escritura y forma. Pero el mayor problema de este sistema se hace aparente rápidamente, es su acumulación y mantenimiento. Simplemente ocupa espacio. Se pueden dañar y se pueden perder, y fin al cabo es mucho papeleo. Y más allá de eso, hay los problemas generales de caligrafía que conocemos todos. Todo esto dejando un lío de papel enorme, desorganizado y escrito en una docena de colores. En 1946, el primer ordenador fue completado, capaz de guardar y organizar esta misma información de forma electrónica. El cambio más drástico de este avance tecnológico instantáneamente fue su legibilidad universal y organización calculadora. Eso empezó una era de datos al instante, el documento que quieres cuando lo pides, con solamente un poquito de la típica frustración de nuestra época moderna metida en la mezcla. Estas máquinas eran revolucionarias, una fuente de orgullo no solamente para sus desarrolladores, pero también para sus dueños. Fueron objeto de lujo. No fueron particularmente útiles en su principio, capaces de pocas funciones, pero aún así una placa de prestigio. Su función práctica era secundaria en comparación con su propiedad de guay, como decimos en nuestra industria. Hoy en día, un sistema de ordenadores parece más como estos de aquí, grandes, con puertos extraños y un sistema operativo abultado, diseñado para las masas. Ahora entiendo que yo he tenido una parcialidad muy obvia contra el status quo de ordenadores sobre mesa de hoy en día. Y seguramente hayas tenido experiencias muy bonitas con ellas, pero todos sabemos la etiqueta que va con esa experiencia y tiene muchos ceros. Y si intentas evitar esa inversión, muchas veces terminas como este pobre chaval de aquí, confundido, sorprendido, frustrado y un poco decepcionado por el término época moderna. Con problemas arcanos y soluciones los cuales requieren la asistencia de un par de genios dedicados, en ser tan increíblemente útiles, generan problemas igualmente increíbles. Y no hay que echar la culpa a nadie. Es imposible quitar todos los fallos de un programa. El problema suele ser buscar los errores que ya existen, no resolverlos, lo cual suele ser más fácil. Pero aquí en Cannabis Club Systems nos hemos dedicado a arreglar estos problemas de la época moderna, poco a poco, empezando con nuestro sistema. Estéticamente decidimos elegir simplicidad y facilidad de leer. Aunque ese hecho oculte muchos de los menús comparado a otros sistemas, pensamos que, al fin y al cabo, el aumento en utilidad vale la pena. En vez de tener todos los botones enfrente de tu cara mirándote vis a vis, nuestro sistema ofrece una variedad de caminos para llegar a tus botones, simplificados y abiertos. Además, es importante avisar que todos nuestros dispositivos de hardware y software son plug and play. Plug and play es una frase inglesa, lo cual no se traduce muy bien en el español, pero significa, al fin y al cabo, que tu dispositivo funciona desde el momento en que lo enchufas, sin líos y sin jaleos. Como una última nota, quiero añadir que nuestro sistema es, por una gran parte, intuitivo, requiriendo poco o nada de entrenamiento para cualquier empleado, pero eso ya lo veremos. Esta aquí es el menú principal, el menú de productos de un sistema desconocido. Puedes ver que están todos los botones claramente distinguidos, con su gran variedad de opciones mostradas, muchas cosas, muchos colores y todo un poco feo, desafortunadamente. Aquí tenemos un explorador de archivos para un sistema de Linux. Puedes ver la gran variedad de botones y puede empezar a ser aplastante y confundir a cualquier usuario no entrenado en los artes arcanos de ordenadores. Y como fácilmente podrás perder tus canciones favoritas de los Backstreet Boys en el proceso. Aquí hay otro ejemplo de un menú demasiado complejo. Esta pantalla es el menú principal de otro sistema desconocido. Están todas tus opciones ahí mismo, pero como se ve claramente, este afán para la eficacia está un poco equivocado. Los desarrolladores de Cannabis Club Systems odian estos menús y, por lo tanto, lo hemos declarado nuestro enemigo número 1. Nuestro deseo siempre ha sido menús simples y claros que se puedan usar con facilidad. Esto es nuestro menú de productos, simple, claro y limpio. Muestra toda la información realmente relevante para el cliente y el empleado explícitamente, sin ninguna complicación añadida. Nuestro menú principal no solamente es simple, pero también contiene las vías a otros menús simplificados, en lo cual encuentras información y opciones sobre todos los aspectos de supervisión de tu club o grow shop. Captado todo en un diseño no solamente estético, pero claro. Pero si de cualquier forma prefieres todas las opciones y botones hay en tu cara, puedes elegir nuestro menú completo para administradores, dándote la capacidad de ver todos los menús si quieres. Finalmente aquí tenemos nuestro sistema de notificaciones cerrada. Este sistema consiste no solamente de avisos de productos y capital, pero también incluye una red de mensajes cerrados. Funcionando esencialmente como un correo electrónico, tendrá la capacidad de mandar mensajes a empleados y que lo reciben en cualquier ordenador conectado. Pero también entendemos que problemas de software no son los únicos. Hardware también puede provocar dolores de cabeza aún más fuertes. Para remediar este problema, ofrecemos dispositivos de hardware especializados para tu club o grow shop. Esto incluye no solamente el dispositivo, pero también el sistema operativo, modificado para su facilidad de uso. Quitamos todos los programas que no son explícitamente necesarios para el funcionamiento de tu club o grow llevando nuestra afinidad para lo simple fuera de nuestro programa y estirándolo al sistema operativo completo también. Esto es un ejemplo de los dispositivos que ofrecemos. Es un ordenador chiquitito, un mini ordenador. Aquí tengo uno en tamaño actual. Aunque sea pequeñito, lleva potencia. Esta maquinita sirve perfectamente como un ordenador sobremesa. Con Wi-Fi incluido, solamente tienes que enchufar un cable micro USB como el de tu móvil y un cable HDMI. Y ahí lo tienes, completamente operativo en 2 minutos. También ofrecemos una gran variedad de dispositivos externos para satisfacer cualquier necesidad que tengas. Ofrecemos dispositivos como sensores de huella o NFC para identificar clientes o Bluetooth para interactuar con el sistema con cualquier controlador capaz. Y si quieres algo más potente que nuestra opción básica, podemos añadir ventiladores a estos ordenadores para que actúen con más rapidez aún. Y como un último comentario sobre los dispositivos de hardware, también ofrecemos todo tipo de pantalla para hacer tablets, ordenadores dedicados y completos, con pantalla desde 1 pulgada, así muy chiquitito, hasta todas las pulgadas que tú quieras. Pero aquí en Cannabis Club Systems no solamente queremos ofrecer una gran variedad de modificaciones para dispositivos, sino escucharte. Esas son unas de las modificaciones que nos han pedido clientes y, por lo tanto, las hemos desarrollado. Como mencionó mi compañero antes, el concepto de negocio sin papel es uno de los mayores pedidos con los cuales cumplimos. También nos han pedido servidores de nube físicos para que seas tú el dueño verdadero del servidor. Lo importante aquí es reforzar nuestro deseo de crear tus ideas. Si tú quieres algo específico para tu club o grow shop, solo tienes que pedirlo y nosotros aquí en Cannabis Club Systems nos juntamos la cabeza hasta que se convierte en realidad. Antes mencioné la propiedad de guay, que se puede atribuir a un objeto o producto. Pues hoy en día ordenadores gigantes, complicados y ruidosos ya no son guays, desafortunadamente. Para renovar esa propiedad en nuestros productos, hemos decidido seguir el camino de discreción. Nuestros dispositivos son pequeñitos y fáciles de ocultar, como ya has visto, para que no lo vea ningún cliente. Puedes aparentar que tu club o grow funcione sin cables. A nadie le gusta ver un torre negro con cables cutres saliendo por todas partes y nuestros ordenadores son muchísimo más discretos en comparación. Por lo tanto, dando un aspecto más limpio y moderno para tu club o grow shop. Aquí son 2 opciones de funda que ofrecemos para los ordenadores, más allá que ese clarito que ya ves. Y como ves, no solamente son estéticamente lisos, pero también se pueden colocar en cualquier parte. Una de las facetas imprescindibles de nuestro sistema es su análisis estadístico. Nuestro sistema supervisa y graba cada interacción que ocurre. Tendrás datos sobre el consumo y movimiento de clientes en forma gráfica para guiar el futuro de tu club. Estos datos incluyen preferencias en el dispensario por miembro y el movimiento de miembros por partes designadas del club. Este análisis también se extiende a tus productos, supervisando en tiempo real cada vez que entra o sale un gramo en tu dispensario. Esta información, cuando se representa de forma gráfica, indica muy claramente cuáles productos son los favoritos de tus clientes como población completa, viendo explícitamente cuánto y cuándo fue dispensado de cada producto por variedad. Una faceta única de nuestro sistema es su integración de datos y comentarios medicinales. Nuestro sistema ofrece opcionalmente la capacidad de mandar datos y comentarios anónimos a profesionales médicos para que continúen sus investigaciones en el tema. Y también por la inversa, esos mismos médicos podrán dejar recomendaciones para pacientes en general o particulares por variedad de producto o su tipo. Otro componente fundamental a cualquier negocio es su seguridad y por lo tanto también lo tenemos cubierto. Nuestro sistema puede controlar el espectro entero de medidas de seguridad, desde cámaras a cerraduras. Todo puede ser controlado por un ordenador remoto. Y más crítico aún es la seguridad de tus datos, los cuales siempre estarán encriptados y seguros cuando estén en nuestros dispositivos. Y finalmente, la última cosa que me gustaría contaros es sobre nuestro futuro como desarrolladores de dispositivos de clubs y grow shops. Lo más importante para nosotros ahora es la integración de kioscos automáticos. Kioscos, lo cual tendrán la capacidad de aceptar pagos y devolver cambio por sí mismos, sin acción humana. La próxima cosa en nuestra lista de desarrollo es un sistema de end-to-end process tracking, lo cual es otra frase que no se traduce particularmente bien a español, pero significa que el seguimiento de tu producto desde su principio, en este caso como semilla, hasta su venta. Con esta capacidad podrás saber exactamente bajo cuáles condiciones se creció tu producto, por quién y etcétera, para poder verificar mejor la calidad de productos que compres. Y finalmente, la integración de bibliotecas cannábicas. Esto quiere decir que bibliotecas de Internet estarían integradas directamente en nuestro sistema, proporcionando una gran cantidad de información sobre cada especie en particular, además de comentarios sobre calidad y efecto subido por la población general en la planeta, con acceso a la Internet. Pues muchísimas gracias por atender nuestra presentación. Y ahora tendremos un momento de preguntas para nuestro sistema. Si tenéis cualquier pregunta o duda, levanta la mano y os vamos atendiendo uno por uno. And the same as English as well. If anybody has any questions about our presentation in English, feel free to ask and we'll be slowly passing the microphone around. ¿Alguna pregunta
As well, it's important to highlight that if anyone wants concrete demonstration of the system, the complete system. We are here all weekend. Just come up to us and we'll show you what it can do.
Yeah.
Spanish as well.
Y si queréis una muestra privada de nuestro sistema, estaremos por aquí todo el fin de semana y nos podrás encontrar y preguntar. ¿Tengo ninguna pregunta? Si me podéis pasar el micrófono, por favor.
Yes, hello. Okay, no problem. Can you tell us more about the hardware in your system, because you mentioned a bit in your presentation? Thank you.
Yeah, we offer, again, discrete hardware options. These mini computers are the main option that we offer, and they're all more than sufficiently powerful to run not only our system, but internet browsing, email, YouTube, and etc., all crunched down into this little form. We offer any additions any modifications that you may find online. If you send us links, we'll figure out how to put it in our system. And again, I want to reinforce that we are here to help you. If you have any idea for your own system, you need to do nothing else but email us and we will get on it until it's done. Y ahora lo repito en español. La pregunta era explicar más nuestros dispositivos y es importante mencionar que el base de nuestros dispositivos son estos ordenadores pequeñitos, los cuales tienen más que suficiente capacidad para hacer cualquier tema de nuestro sistema y también de búsqueda de Internet, correo electrónico, YouTube, música, etc. Los dispositivos que tuvimos en la pantalla son los que ofrecemos por ya. Quiero reforzar la idea de que si vosotros tenéis una idea para tu sistema en particular o un deseo, no tiene que hacer nada más que preguntar y nosotros nos juntamos la cabeza otra vez hasta que se convierte en realidad y ya tienes tu modificación. ¿Alguna pregunta más?
Hi, would this system be something that possibly different European countries could take on board for the possibility of legalization happening in their countries, that they could adopt your system in order to provide a better service for the time when other companies actually legalize and allow clubs or dispensary systems to operate in other EU countries? Is this something a country could come to you and say, look, we have an idea or a platform of how we as a country might like to lay it out in order to control it? Is this something that you could adopt and change to maybe other EU countries or a different sort of technology?
Yeah, we would be very happy to collaborate with anyone having such suggestions. We already have had to adapt our systems to the different tax regulations in various countries where it's been applied. And as such, if there's a good idea coming forward, we'll be very happy to collaborate and transform our system with you, for example, to make a product that fits whichever region. Yeah.
So should other European countries look at your system and the way you've laid it out as a way to maybe implement it in their country? A lot of EU countries, the governments are very unsure of what way to sort of implement the full legalization, and they're kind of clutching at straws. So they're looking at America at different dispensaries, outlets and stores. Holland has its coffee shops and stuff, where Spain has the likes of clubs and stuff like that. Do you feel this is the system for the future that really can be looked over and watched upon in a modern world?
Well, the situation here in Spain, for example, is that a lot of club or dispensary owners still use pen and paper, despite them maybe having 5,000 members. It's clear that this needs to evolve, and as such, this is where we come in to try and help this. As well, this is why we offer, if we have a club who wants our system, whatever their wishes are, whatever their tax regulations are, we will implement it into our system to comply with their country's regulations. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Within reason, it's a bit of a vague question, because I mean, I'm representing Ireland and stuff like that. Now, where cannabis is completely illegal and stuff like that, we're very aware that the UN is putting pressure on EU countries to either legalise or decriminalise it. One of the big problems coming from Ireland is they have a big problem with how and what way do they lay a platform out in order to make this work. Looking at what you're presenting here, the cannabis club systems, it seems like a very unique and a clever idea to make it easier for a business person or a company to adopt a strategy and to put out a platform in order to benefit themselves, the financial side, but also its customers.
No, what you're saying is right. It's still a vague question. But this is why it's very important for us to make sure we collaborate with the country in question, the request in question, to be able to tailor a system based on whichever regulations they might have in their country.
Okay, sort of to put it back into context. So any business or country, depending on their needs, you can provide a system that can be adopted to their specific needs or resources. So this is something that is very beneficial.
Absolutely. This is one of the things we pride ourselves in, is to actually tailor the system based on exactly what they need. And as well, this is also why we're here in this conference, because we believe in the legalization. We want this to happen, and we want to help to ensure that this happens.
Oh, agreed. I mean, one of the things I'm a firm believer in stuff like that is there needs to be a solid platform in order to make this work, but it has to work for both sides. And again, looking at your company, I really believe that you have the way forward.
Well, thank you. That's very nice of you.
I don't know if I have too many more questions. Out of interest, do most of the clubs in Spain adopt your system?
Well, we're fairly new in the market. However, the ones we show this to, the ones that see our system, yes, they apply it, they take it on board.
Okay, and since implementing that, have they come back to look for more adaptations or to move a bit more forward with it? As they've come up to speed with your program and what it can actually do for them beneficially, have they come back and approached you for more ideas or more help?
Yeah, I can say that every single club that takes our system on board, they have their request, because every single club or dispensary is run in different ways. Some people might want a module to track the sale of Coca-Cola, for example. Whatever they request to us, we do that for them. This is how our system improves, by listening to the wishes from the clubs and implementing them.
Okay, so since then, certain clubs have adopted your process. They've seen that the benefits far outweigh, going back to, as you said, the pen and paper technique.
Yes, that's correct.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
¿Hay alguna pregunta más? Any more questions?
Yeah, I would like to know from you the difference from your system to the EC, for example, to the ECCSC or another kind of product similar to yours. And also I would like to know, just as a reference, how much can be the cost for a cannabis club of 500 members to have your system. And I understand it will be depend on what you want, but more or less the average of cost, how is it?
Okay, well, our system as it is, we offer everyone who wants to try our system a 2-month free trial period, meaning you have 2 months to try the system completely free. During these 2 months, if there is something about the system you don't like, if there is something that you want in our system, we will implement it for you. Again, for free. You'll have a 2-month trial. We'll tailor the system exactly after your needs. After those 2 months, if you choose to continue with us, it's based on a per member basis, the price. So whether you have a large or a small club, the price is tailored to your members. And as for your first question about ECCSC, I know this system very well too. The main, well, there's a lot of differences, but the main difference is that we actually, if you have a wish, we implement it. We do it for you. We construct the system around your club and your needs. I do not think they do that.
Right, thanks.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? Questions?
And let me again stress that anyone who would like a personal run-through of the system, a personal demo, we are here the whole weekend, so just come up to us and we'll show you.
Vale, pues muchísimas gracias por vuestra participación y ahora os dejo con mi compañero Joshua, un abogado de los Estados Unidos, experto en el sector cannábico.
Thank you. Thank you, Cannabis Club Systems. My name is Josh Capel. I'm going to switch topics slightly here. I'm an attorney in the United States that has worked on cannabis legalization in Colorado. I'm being part of the drafting committee and the core campaign team for Amendment 64, which really regulated marijuana like alcohol in Colorado. I'm also a partner at a law firm, Vicente Cederberg, and we represent hundreds of marijuana businesses all over the states. And I just want to thank again Cannabis Club Systems for having me out here. They wanted me to sort of say a few words, but where I want to start is to answer your question in the back a little bit, and it's in every country in the world that has some form of regulated cannabis, the necessity and the need and the requirements to have a system that tracks your cannabis, that tracks your sales, that proves that you can be compliant is paramount. We often joke in the US a lot that if you're really, really good at compliance, then maybe you can sell some cannabis. And that can't be more true in the US, in Canada, and other places that are regulating marijuana. And you'll see it, likely in Europe as countries want to move in this direction of regulating cannabis. They need to feel comfortable about where it's going. And it's systems like Cannabis Club systems that are really absolutely paramount in moving the ball forward on the legalization front. And it makes sense for all the reasons I mentioned earlier about why you'd want to adopt this system here in Spain or other countries that are sort of in the illegal area, in the gray market area now, for both business analytics, for the data powers that you have, for convenience of avoiding paperwork, but also because that is the future. You know, having some sort of software system that tracks the cannabis, who it's going to, where it's coming from, is the future, and so it makes sense to adopt that now. In Colorado and in other places, the fight for legalizing marijuana has started long before I was around. The fight to make cannabis legal really, started all over the world. And what we did in Colorado was really we stood on the shoulders of folks in the States, in Europe, around the world who have been pushing this fight for a long time. And it's those people I have to thank for where we are in Colorado. But really it was 13 years ago, 14 years ago when I first came to Europe, when I smoked hash on the streets of Sevilla, when I explored the liberal drug policies of Portugal, when I tried to see as many coffee shops in Amsterdam as possible, that really opened my eyes up to how this world could be different and how different cultures looked at the cannabis plant. But it was about 10 to 12 years ago in Colorado where we really started the fight to legalize cannabis. And what we did, our original goal and our original premise was this. Was we had to convince the people who did not use cannabis, who knew nothing about cannabis, that it wasn't that bad. Not the people here at Cannabis, but the grandmas, the grandpas, the moms, the people who have no experience with cannabis. We had to give them some sort of reference point of where did cannabis reside in society, how bad was it? And so our whole mission was to educate the public that cannabis is just like alcohol. It's just like beer, it's just like wine, it's just like hard alcohol. And in fact, not only is it just like alcohol and people use it in the same manner, but it's actually safer than alcohol. That it's not, it doesn't cause domestic violence, it doesn't cause death, it doesn't cause reckless behavior. It's actually safer for both the individual and society than alcohol is. And that was our sole goal. Our sole goal was if we could convince the public the truth about cannabis, that it's not as harmful as alcohol is, then the people who know nothing about cannabis, have no intention of smoking cannabis, would be on our side. And that's what happened. After 8 to 10 years of educating the public about this message, we ran Amendment 64 in Colorado in 2012 to legalize cannabis. And we were victorious. We got more people voted in favor of legalizing marijuana in Colorado than voted for President Obama in Colorado. It worked quite well. And since then, a lot of people, it's been 2 years since we've had legal marijuana sales in Colorado. People often wonder, how is it? How's things going? And the opponents in the campaign, our opponents said, oh, all your children are going to drop out of school and just smoke weed. None of the businesses are going to come here. Your economy is going to crumble. Everyone's going to crash their cars. No. None of that happened. In fact, exactly the opposite. What we've seen that legalizing cannabis is really not that big of a deal in terms of youth using marijuana. We have the same amount of youth who use marijuana today as we did before. The car accidents, about the same. If anything, it's gone down a little bit. Crime has gone down a little bit. We've had 10,000 less arrests related to marijuana each year. Last year in Colorado, there's about $1 billion worth of marijuana sales. That has led to $80 to $90 million of tax revenue for our state. And then just recently, the U.S. News and World Report, a very reputable sort of magazine reporting agency in the States, ranked Denver, Colorado, the largest city in Colorado, as the #1 place to live. So despite cannabis being legal, it's still the #1 place to live. And that just shows that, at the end of the day, things are working out very, very well in Colorado. And I think in large part because people just don't think it's that big of a deal. And what's so fascinating is our message in Colorado is that it's okay for adults to use cannabis. It's okay for adults to be proud to use cannabis. Something that here in Spain could be considered promoting the drug. That's what we did. We promoted it because I honestly believe that if you want to go home after work and you don't want to have that whiskey on the rocks, that glass of wine, and you just want to have a joint, great. You're probably healthier than the person who's going to keep drinking those beers and that wine at night. And so, but I say all this, things are going good, but we still have our problems. We still have problems in Colorado, and the fight and the struggle that we have is same. It's a similar struggle that we have here in Spain that we have all over the world. For example, in Colorado, we made it legal so you could cultivate marijuana, you could produce marijuana products, you could sell marijuana, but there's no place to smoke it at. The places that sell marijuana they don't have on-site consumption. So it's sort of the opposite as it is here in Spain, where there's legal places to smoke it, but the distribution is being challenged by the courts. And so we're still struggling. We're still struggling and still fighting in Colorado for what that looks like, where people can go use marijuana at. Another big problem we have in Colorado that you have to be careful of here is that we didn't forgive the marijuana crimes of the past. People who have marijuana convictions, we didn't pardon those convictions. We didn't erase their sentences. And in fact, we made it difficult, and I didn't make it difficult, but the government made it difficult for them to get a marijuana license. The people who grew marijuana in the past, who risked everything, growing it for patients, for others, and they got in trouble with the law, they can't participate in Colorado in our current industry. And this is wrong, and this is a problem, and something we're trying to work on, and trying to figure out how we sort of erase the wrongdoings of the past. And then third, in Colorado, the third main problem we have is that it's not legal. It is legal under state law, but with our national government, it's still not legal. And our national government has instituted this policy of tolerance. But as anyone knows who's been in any country that has had some sort of policy of tolerance, that it changes. It changes with the whim of the politicians. And so, so we're still fighting. And I tell you, there we go. And I tell you all of this because really, we're in it together, and our fight is similar. And there's still many, many outstanding questions. When you think about what does the legalization of cannabis look like? What does it look like? And I do think it's happening, and that's where we're moving, and for many reasons, that's exactly where we should move. But when you ask yourself, what does it look like? You have to ask yourself some very key questions. One is, how do you balance corporate interests with those who have grown marijuana their whole life, who are in love with the marijuana plant? And how do you strike that balance? You go out to the hall and you see some booths of folks who've been in it forever, and you see some folks who are just well-financed corporations. How do you balance it? I don't know. How should marijuana be sold? Should it continue to be sold at associations and standalone businesses, or should it be sold at the supermarket? Should it be sold right next to alcohol? I don't know. What about advertising? Here, in many places they restrict advertising. But if what we're saying is that it's actually less harmful if people use marijuana than alcohol, shouldn't advertising be the same as it is with alcohol? Or is there something about marijuana that makes it that it shouldn't be? And what about consumption? Should marijuana and alcohol be all consumed at the same premise? Or should the people who drink beer hang out over here and the people who smoke hang out over here? Like what does our world look like in the future? I don't know. These are just questions that I'm raising to everyone because really, like I said, we have this opportunity. We have this opportunity as we move forward in creating a market, as we take this black market and this gray market and we turn it into this legal market, we have this opportunity to shape what it looks like. And so I just want to encourage everyone to get involved, to do your part. If you're an association, get involved in protecting your rights. If you're an individual, an activist, speak your mind. If you're a lawyer, whoever you may be, just do your part. And there's a great group coming on I think in like an hour and a half, who's speaking up here next, who I suggest everyone donate to, everyone support, who's really pushing the ball forward in legalizing marijuana in Spain. And that's responsible regulation. And so I just want to encourage everyone to do their part. I want to encourage everyone to sort of dream big as we shape what this world looks like when it comes to cannabis. And if people have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Again, I just want to thank Cannabis Club Systems for letting me say a few words. And I also want to apologize for my horrible Spanish and speaking completely in English. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias por tu participación y pues ahora nos vamos. ¿Hay una pregunta? Perdona.
I can.
Yeah. No. Okay. Perfect. I want to use the chance to have somebody from the beginning of the end of the prohibition. I didn't know that you're here, but it's curious because I have some questions when you talked about current status in Colorado. Now the U.S. elections of the president coming up, and as you said, in federal level, is still kind of tolerated or it's not legal. And what is your stake, or what do you think it will be? There's an option that they take it back because it's a big business already in Colorado, and it showed how great results it had, and all the doomsday predictions didn't come alive. So it's a good example of it works. But are you afraid, as an activist, as a lawyer, that it might still, despite all the positive results, to be cut off and revealed?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. Like I mentioned, under federal law, everything is still illegal. And if you look at how we are today as how we were in the past, it's even easier today for the federal government to go around and shut everyone down. They just have to pick up the newspaper and just look at all the advertisements. But when it comes to could they or would they, and is there the political will, it's interesting, with the next presidential election, there's, really, I see three candidates. There's, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump. Bernie has come out, vocally in favor of legalizing marijuana many times. Hillary's supportive, she says now, but she's also been a politician for 20, 30 years, and if it seems a little convenient for her to support it now. And then, then there's Trump, and who knows, what that wild card entails. I don't think, if it's one of those three, I'm not that concerned that they would try and completely shut it down. There could be a time where people try and walk it back a little bit, try and constrict it a little bit. And what does that look like? Well, really what it looks like is probably innocent business owners who get caught in the crossfire, their business was too close to a school or the wrong person came in, and that they're going to be sort of the collateral damage of some sort of constriction like that. I hope that's not the case. But I think we would be naive to assume that we're only walking forward and that there's never steps back.
Thank you. I wonder, maybe you can give us some insight about this from a consumer perspective. Somebody who walks into a dispensary, just makes a simple purchase, and if he's recorded, let's say in an online system like this Cannabis Club system, if the people there are still have this kind of fear of being tracked down, if something, because there's a big database, and in times of NSA and everything is easily available, you easily be in kind of the person to track down only because you're a customer once things change back again. So the people are they afraid, or they don't care about this at all?
I mean, there's so many people that use marijuana that if we all came out in public, and if we all announced to the world that we use marijuana, the war on marijuana would be over. And so people's fear of like, oh no, they're gonna find out that I'm one of the 20 million people in the US who use marijuana every month. Who cares? Who really cares? But for those who are like concerned about, you know, big data and sort of privacy concerns, in Colorado, we prohibited the government from requiring people to record identification when they purchase marijuana. So there's no government tie-in to recording purchases. Now with systems like the Cannabis Club system, I mean, yes, I mean, I think part of tracking people's marijuana use, I think it is, you know, it is important, but like, you know, and I can let them speak for it, but it's about their own internal controls of confidentiality and using randomized numbers and, you know, and how you store data and sort of the protection there. But, so I hope that answered your question.
If I may, another question. I wonder about big issues still that it's all in cash. So there's no bank accounts for dispensary. Am I right? So
no, you're not.
Change.
It's slowly changing. And so what's happening is that there's some banks that are in the States that are banking in this industry. But what they are requiring to get a bank account is that you use a system like Cannabis Club system, or you use a different sort of point of sale system to track everything. Because what the federal government did in the States is that they sort of shifted the regulatory burden or the regulatory enforcement burden onto the banks to sort of turn them into like tax agents per se, you know. And so they have a requirement to sort of like track all the numbers and the money coming through.
I see. One more last question. You mentioned things which are now on the agenda, like the places to smoke, for example. Is there also is the black market still an issue which has to be tackled, or is not a big deal at all?
You know, it's like, who knows someone who brews beer or makes wine at their own house? Like, at the end of the day, like, what's
it's easier to cultivate the plants.
But what we're seeing is that like, if you look at the sales number in Colorado, like, you see that the legal market sales are increasing. And it's not that people aren't growing their own. It's just that just like people who brew beer, you brew your own beer, but you go to the store and buy it when you really want some, or you want a particular type. And so we are seeing sort of like the black market sort of shift into sort of this connoisseur, people growing their own and sharing it and trading it, but also going to the store and buying different strains. It's convenient, and you know, and you don't have to, I don't know, and you have all this selection. So like, we see it slowly going a different direction.
I see. So it's not a huge topic, because here in Europe, I would say that one big argument pro legalization is always, you know, we have to cut off the money for the black market and you know, fight the organized crime. This is like, I mean, it's a strong argument indeed.
Yeah, no, I mean, and we've seen that with sort of the narco terrorists in Mexico. We have seen like a decline in their revenue, and other, you know, there's definitely evidence that the black market is shrinking. And I think how I like to look at it, especially as like states and other countries like come on board in terms of how are you going to regulate marijuana, I think the biggest question I have to ask is, how do you bring your current black market into the regulated market? You know, like, that to me is the most fundamental question, because if you don't do that, then the regulated market will never compete, and the black market knows how to grow better weed. So like, you have to figure out how to bring it over, and I think that's absolutely crucial. And I think in Colorado there are some mistakes that brought some people over, but not everybody.
I see. Thank you. That's it.
Hay una pregunta al fondo.
It's an interesting time. You're in transition and you're looking at the sector. Can you tell me some of the things you think the industry is doing, which is, if you like, it's been given the rope to hang itself? What are some of the practices going on in the industry which you think will threaten the industry itself?
It's a loaded question.
It happens in every sector.
And I apologize for always going back to Colorado for examples, but it's what I know. In Colorado, when we first regulated medical marijuana businesses in 2010, we allowed it so each local government could decide whether they wanted to permit these businesses or not. And there's a bunch of businesses that are already in existence. They're in existence for a couple of years. And there's this community north of Boulder called Loveland, and there's another one in Longmont. And it was in between Boulder and Fort Collins, right in front of the mountains. And both of the businesses in these communities had just horrible advertisement. They painted their whole building green. They had people dressed up in joints dancing outside. They had sandwich boards. They just horrible advertisements. And so what happened is that the people in those communities put together a petition, and they voted them out, and they shut down these businesses. And that, to me, I think, is a very existential threat to the industry, is just like poor advertising. And it's the image that the industry gives off to the public. Because what you have to do in order to regulate cannabis, if you're looking at it from a sort of public perception perspective, is that you have to have people accept the image of cannabis. And if your image is very cheesy and not tasteful and in your face, and I don't think you get there. And I think that that's a threat. And then the other thing, without like expanding on it, but just as like another bad image is really just all the dabs is just a bad image. People who get way too high with blow torches is just not a good image for the overall public. Oh, I'll say one more thing too, is the other thing that we faced in Colorado when we first legalized marijuana was edibles that were too strong. And so a lot of adults who didn't use marijuana in 30 years would go to the store, buy a brownie, and then they'd freak out 2 hours, 3 hours later, and then they'd go to the hospital, and then the hospital would just be like, drink some water, you'll be fine. But they freaked out, and so then like their image, their experience, their first time using cannabis in 20, 30 years was a bad experience. And that also, I think, is a threat to the industry.
Can I throw in another question, seeing as it's the way? You mentioned, just before I asked the question, about this difference between the black market and how you pull the black market into a regulated market. And you said, and the way it had been done, you kind of left some people behind. And it reminds me of someone who was involved in the Northern Ireland peace process. And he keeps talking about the ones we left behind. And that's now the problem. Can you elaborate on that and sort of explain why you think they got left behind and what needs to happen? Yeah, and I mean, so when you regulate anything, like regulations involve rules. And a big part of like cannabis regulations and other sort of privileged licenses and privileged industries in the States have been qualifications for licensure. Who qualifies to hold one of these licenses? And whenever you talk about who qualifies, you're also talking about who doesn't qualify. And so what happened in Colorado is they said in order to qualify to hold one of these licenses, you cannot have certain drug convictions. And if you have these drug convictions, then you don't qualify. Well, it just so happens that the people who have grown marijuana their whole life, some of them have drug convictions, and they didn't qualify. And so, that was one example of like how it left some people behind. Another example is sort of the monetary cost of entering into the market. So in New York, in the state of New York, they allowed for 5 medical marijuana businesses for the whole state. And you had to have $200,000 to sort of put down as a deposit. And the application process probably costed people $1 million to apply for this chance of getting one of these 5 licenses. And that sort of cost, that barrier to entry means that anyone except for the most wealthiest can't even try and get one of these licenses. And so that's sort of the other way that people are getting left behind, is sort of on these like limited number of licenses and very expensive licenses. And really those are like the 2 main pieces, is sort of, government created limits on the market and high barriers to entry, and then sort of restrictions on who can have one of these licenses. In my opinion, are the 2 main pieces that sort of leave the current industry out of whatever this new industry looks like.
¿Otra pregunta? Sí.
Gracias. Thank you again for everything you said. I mean, one of my main reasons for being here is trying to find a better understanding of how prohibition could be eradicated. Going back to the American thing, because the federal law has put cannabis as a Schedule I drug, is this not going to make it very hard for them to step back and say, it does have medical benefits, how do we alter this? But also from this, because with the UN treaty, it states that any country that wants to legalize marijuana, they have to control the sale and supply directly from a government point of view. So how does a government step back when they said, because it's Schedule I, it has no medical benefits, yet the American government do hold patents? How are they going to step back and try and make it easier for countries to now put the likes of a cannabis club system, you know, into a working order in order to make it more beneficial for the people that actually need it? I fully believe there has to be a re-education towards cannabis and medical marijuana, because the misunderstanding towards it is overwhelming and unbelievable. Like you said, people can go to a bar, they can get drunk as they want. They generally do cause more harm than good, where a person that goes out and they smoke a joint or gets high, to be honest, they're probably just going to go out and enjoy the night, or they're going to go home and just go to sleep. But how does a country re-educate their people that there's more to this than what prohibition has led us to believe? Again, a re-education towards this is essential, but like the bar thing, you should be able to go to a cannabis cafe, a cannabis club, or somewhere where there's like-minded people into the same perspectives of life and stuff like that. I mean, being told something isn't good for you, yet the overwhelming facts state it is quite good. If you look at the facts, how many people have died from alcohol-related drugs or disease, it's overwhelming, yet I can't find any statistic that says anyone's ever died from marijuana, unless it was something crazy, like they over-ate it and something like that and choked on it. But how does a country now re-adopt and say to their people, this is safe? How do we lay out a platform when actually we're being controlled from the top?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot gets wasted on the sort of scheduling argument of marijuana. If it's Schedule I or Schedule V or not scheduled at all, it doesn't sort of change, in my mind, marijuana prohibition. And really, you know, what it takes to change the laws is more than just scheduling it differently on both the treaty level and in different countries. But to answer your more pertinent question, which is I think is like, how do we educate these people? How do we educate folks who know nothing about marijuana, their only experience with marijuana is how is what their rebellious kid using it, or they smoked it once in college and that's why they're not a doctor anymore, or whatever sort of negative view they have about marijuana. What you have to do is you have to somehow expose them to marijuana in a positive way. And this ties back to the other questions, like when their only experience with marijuana is horrible advertisements, they're still gonna have a negative view of it. And so like, how do you then show them a positive light on marijuana? And what we've seen is that when people start to use it therapeutically, or they know someone who uses it therapeutically, their vision of marijuana changes. When elected officials, when politicians come and they visit a licensed marijuana grow in Colorado, their vision of what this looks like changes. And that's something we do. We've hosted politicians from all over the world in Colorado of just giving them tours, because it changes their mind. They see 100 people trimming plants and watering plants, and they see real businesses and they see business people. And the sort of the third piece is sort of like giving people a frame of mind. Like that's why we talked about marijuana and alcohol, because it gives people a frame of mind. Someone who's never going to see marijuana, never going to try marijuana, never going to go into a marijuana business, how do they conceptualize marijuana? Well, right now they conceptualize it as the devil's lettuce, or some horrible substance that's going to make you go crazy. How do we get them just to think, oh, it's not that big of a deal? Because it really isn't that big of a deal. And so that's why we focus in Colorado on that argument that marijuana is similar to alcohol, and in fact less harmful than alcohol.
Fully agreeable and stuff like that. I mean, one thing that's commonly said and stuff like that, a person, because it's not controlled, how do they know what's a safe quantity or what to try for the first time? dare I say, most people in their family home or through friends, they go to a bar or they're given a glass of wine or a small glass of beer or a shandy. You know, try that, drink it slowly, see how it reacts to you. Unfortunately, because cannabis is illegal and it's on the black market, it's a case of what you have, how much is it, and you walk away. So by really prohibition ending and allowing the legalization to go forward, the likes of a cannabis club system, that it is a controlled environment and a person comes in and says, hi, I've never tried marijuana before, could you now recommend something that I try? I have MS, I have ME, I have arthritis. I mean, there has to be a platform, and it's the only way forward.
Well, 5 milligrams. You should try 5 milligrams first. Of THC.
Your local dealer is
but you know, we ran a campaign in Colorado called First Time 5, and it was the first time you're trying an edible, 5 milligrams, that's it. But the question is, well, how do you know that there's 5 milligrams in there? Because we've regulated and because we tested and because we have licensed testing labs. And so it's, you know, it's which one comes first. You know, but with regulation, you'll know how strong and how potent they are. You'll also know if there's pesticides being used. You'll know if there's mold. You'll know if there's other harmful adulterants in it, because you can test it. And you can't really test it. I mean, and there is some testing going on now, but to really, you know, bring it to the next level of testing, you have to license it and regulate it.
Definitely. Would you feel, is there any platform we could remove from America and try to adapt into Europe in order to move forward in the legalization and control of this?
I think that the group Regulation Responsible, I think I butchered it, but they have these 5 pillars that, you know, I would recommend, and they've been working with many folks, and I think they have a good sort of framework and model here in Spain. You know, in terms of other countries, I think you have to tailor it for your country. But I think sort of the premise is the same, is that we need licensed businesses, we need people to check IDs, we need testing, we need to be able to look at this from a public health approach, and we also need to look at this in terms of how it sits with alcohol. And I think, you know, I've been doing some work up in Canada, and really it's like the question is like, well, why don't you just treat this exactly how you have your alcohol system? Or if there's things you don't like about your alcohol system, then let's use this as an opportunity to sort of modify those.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? Any more questions? No? Vale, pues os quiero pedir muchas gracias a todos por atender nuestra presentación y os dejamos para que disfrutáis tu Cannabis 2016.
Thank you for your time.